Alright, in this lesson we're going to talk about the Indus River Valley civilization. Um, see the learning targets listed there. Keywords that you might want to pay attention to here. We're going to talk about two city-states, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. Those are both part of the Indus River Valley civilization. And we're going to talk about a group called the Aryans. Now, the Indus River, you might hear Indus, you think, oh, India. It's actually not mainly in India, it's partially in India. Most of the Indus River flows through Pakistan, the country of modern-day Pakistan. So that's what we're talking about. This is one of the other early civilizations, and just like all the others, it's centered upon water. So water is that important thing that allows these civilizations to develop. So the flooding of rivers. So you see the Indus River Valley up here. This kind of yellow section is where the civilization developed, and you can see the Indus. This is Pakistan, modern-day Pakistan, and then a little portion of it does go over. I think this is India right in here. So about 5,000 years ago, it's not as old as some of the other civilizations. You can see if I kind of move this out of the way, you should be able to see kind of like a satellite imagery of that. It's rather a little bit more spread out than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Some important things about Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, these seals have been found. Interesting enough, these seals have been found in other places, such as Mesopotamia. So we know that maybe the Indus River Valley people traded with people in Mesopotamia, so kind of interesting. Not exactly sure what all the meanings were behind those, or those are the commodities that they're trading, or if they all had, were meaning something else. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro definitely have some kind of characteristics in common. The Indus people were really creative and showed a lot of ingenuity in what they were able to do. Their streets were laid out in grids similar to ours. Roads ran north and south, east and west, and everything was built in between. Probably had about 10,000 people in the cities, which is kind of like New York City at this time. I mean, that was a huge, huge city. There were not cities of millions and millions of people like there are today, or even hundreds of thousands of people would be. Something that in the early days of humanity that wouldn't have happened. So 10,000 people is huge. They had sewer systems, so water could drain from the house and waste could drain from the house. This is something that even in Europe during the Renaissance, it wouldn't have existed. So kind of like these developments thousands of years ago would take even thousands of years to make them to kind of modern times. So to kind of a lot of ingenuity. What you're seeing in this picture up here is one of those kind of examples of their use of water and water drainage. It's a bath, not so much like a bath that you and I would use, but more like a public pool, probably used for religious purification, not so much for just swimming and recreation. But it was a centerpiece of the city. So they also had houses made of bricks, and those bricks were uniform in feature. You can kind of imagine if you had bricks that are all different sizes, how kind of your house would not fit together very well. So the fact that they had uniform bricks, they had bathrooms in their house that could drain, and they also had kind of what I call a modern form of air conditioning. They situated their houses to catch the breezes as the breezes came through. India and Pakistan both get to be very, very hot in the summertime, so being able to keep yourself cool is really important. So you can see in these pictures, you can see the uniformity of the bricks. This might be some sort of a well for filling a bath of some kind. You can see the grid layout there, kind of where the streets run, very, very straight. Those are the paths that you would walk to get from one place to the other. One of the interesting things is that we don't exactly know what happened to these people. There's not really a record of it, or we have records, but we just can't understand their language, which I'll get to that point here in a second. So we're not sure if it was invasion, maybe it was drought, maybe even there was some sort of catastrophe. There could have been an earthquake that historians think that maybe the waters became diverted, and so the Indus began flowing differently, and so people had to kind of move other places. Maybe they were conquered. There's no evidence that the Indus people were warlike. They didn't really have weapons. So if somebody came in that was warlike and had weapons, most likely the Indus people would have been conquered fairly easily. So they're not exactly sure what happened, but they didn't last until today. So they've kind of gone away. Another thing, when the Aryans come in, the Aryans developed what's called a caste system. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about this now, but this is really important because this is going to influence India, even into modern times. A component of Indian culture is that they have a caste system. It's much, much more complex than this today. But at the top, you can see religious leaders held the power. So if I kind of point to it up here, at the top is where most of the power is. But you see as the triangle narrows, there's less of those. So there's less priests than there are warriors. There are less warriors than there are laborers and peasants. So these are the bottom people. Most people are laborers and peasants. And as you go up your status, you have more power. And there's the social hierarchy is really important, that you kind of stayed within and ran with the people in your group. You didn't associate with people outside of that. It's kind of a hard concept for us to understand, but that's kind of really what's going on there. The Aryans were also responsible for Sanskrit, which will go into influencing a lot of other languages later on, including like Hindi, that is spoken by the people of India. Sanskrit's going to be kind of like this ancient language that would kind of influence that. What else do we have here? So I already kind of said that they were theocracies because the priests had all the power. They were polytheistic. It's not Hinduism. I know we haven't talked about Hinduism yet, but we're getting there eventually. Hinduism and Buddhism both start in India. Particularly Hinduism is strongly influenced from these beliefs of the Aryans and their polytheistic nature, but it's not Hinduism. It borrowed some things from that, and it kind of became that over the centuries, but it wasn't Hinduism at first. What else? I've already kind of acknowledged that they're not exactly sure what happened. After the decline of the Aryans, the next major civilization would be an empire, but it would not come to power until around 300 BC. So big things with the Indus River Valley is their innovations, knowing the Great Bath, the two cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were really kind of both important. They were city-states, pretty much had everything there. Most of the farming would happen around those cities, and then all the political and religious and organization was all done inside the cities. Markets and things like that would also been in there. But just knowing their organization, knowing that they were polytheistic and the influence that's going to have on later people is kind of really important, and knowing that we don't really know what happened to them. I kind of acknowledged this earlier, and I guess I kind of forgot to explain this, but we have records of the Indus people and their writing. They had a system of writing. Unfortunately, we can't interpret it. Scientists, anthropologists, historians are not able to translate that language, and that maybe can make you wonder, well, okay, we were able to translate the hieroglyphics, and how do we know what that is? How do we not know this? Well, in the case of hieroglyphics, we discovered the Rosetta Stone that allowed us to translate those things. Nothing has been discovered at this point that allows us to translate the language of the Indus River Valley people. That's not saying that it couldn't be discovered by archaeologists. And so I think that's part of the reason that archaeologists continue this quest of trying to discover new things and look up new things and dig up things, because if there might be a piece to a mystery of solving what happened to the Indus River Valley people. So they're kind of an interesting group. Definitely those innovations, I'd want you to catch that. And remember that we're not talking about India, but we're talking about the Indus River Valley. Thanks for watching.